about the Palestinian refugees in UNRWA, and I know there are some representatives here amongst the people of this conference. UNRWA, as you all know, is an anomalous organization that deals only with the Palestinian refugees. It does not deal with any other refugees throughout the world, and it deals with the refugees, the Palestinian refugees, differently than any other refugee in any other conflict in the world is dealt with. Instead of rehabilitating and relocating them within 3 to 5 years, which is what we do everywhere else in the world, Palestinians asked to be dealt differently, and they have been refugees for 60 years. They've been passing down the refugee status from father to son, from son to grandson. And this is something that Europe and all the contributing countries to UNRWA are being stupid about the way that you're doling out your money. If you want to continue to pay money to UNRWA, you want to continue taking your European euro and putting it into their coffers, do it smartly. I'm not saying give them any less money, and I'm not saying that the Palestinians don't need that money and they need relief. But do it in a way where you're making your money conditional on relocating and rehabilitating those refugees, so within 5 years, maybe 10 years, you won't have to pay out any more European money in order to help them. Don't perpetuate the problem with your money. Use it smartly. Make it work in a way the Palestinians will have no more refugees within 10 years. Don't wait till the end of the conflict, because if you do so, the Palestinian refugees will continue to suffer. This is a humanitarian issue that the world has to step in and tell the Palestinian leaders enough is enough. There will be no Palestinian refugees within 5 to 10 years, even if there's no end of conflict. The people in the national camp on the right-hand side of the political map in Israel are all talking about annexing parts or all of Judea and Samaria. We're talking about at least area C, where 100% of the Israelis, the settlers, live in Judea and Samaria. We're talking about annexing that area and giving only 3% of the Palestinians. There are 2 million Palestinians living in Judea and Samaria. Only 3% of them are in Area C. If Israel annexes Area C, we now have a solution where all of the settlers are part and parcel of Israel, and the 3% of Palestinians living there, we will give citizenship to vote for the Knesset, just like Arab Israelis have. They will be allowed to vote for Knesset. They will be part and parcel of Israel, which leaves us with areas A and B, where the majority of 97% of Palestinians living in Judea and Samaria. And here, there are different solutions. Some say give them the vote, annex those areas as well and give them the right to vote. Those are some in the right wing in Israel are saying now today. Others are saying there should be some kind of affiliation or re-affiliation with the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan, because as you all know, up until 1988, they were affiliated with Jordan and they had Jordanian citizenship, and we should go back to that situation. We're annexing part of Judea and Samaria or all of Judea and Samaria, and giving Palestinians living there the right to vote for Knesset will change Israel's democracy. It will. Instead of having 11 members of Knesset who are Arabs, which is the current situation, the Arab Israelis have the right to vote, the Palestinians living in Judea and Samaria don't. If we allow them to vote, we will have 40 members of Knesset out of 120. It won't have a majority. It will change the way the country looks like. But there are people on the right wing that are saying that we should do just that in order to bring about a more realistic end to the conflict, instead of continuously telling the Palestinians, which is what the world and the Palestinian leadership have been doing, you continue to suffer a little while longer because at the end of the day you'll have a Palestinian state. So that would negate totally, under that solution, would negate totally the question of apartheid. I, again, not being a racist, want the Palestinians to thrive. I want them to have proper lives alongside me in the village right next to Neve Daniel and Gush Etzion. But I think, personally, that we can't go to the solution I just mentioned before. We can't give them the right to vote for Knesset. So my solution, or the Israeli initiative that's mentioned in my bio, is to annex all of Yehuda V'Shomron, all of Judea and Samaria, and the Palestinians living there would be re-affiliated with the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan. Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan, as a democracy, you all know, is a joke. There are 80% of the citizens living in Jordan today who are Palestinian. The Hashemites are a minority of 20% that control 80% of the Palestinians. It's not a true democracy, but the king and the previous king have been friends to the West. which is why the West keeps him propped up. The West could continue to do the same, and the king could continue to be the king, and the democracy could continue to be the same democracy if they give affiliation back to the Arabs living in Judea and Samaria. They would be Jordanian citizens living in Israel, living in Judea and Samaria. The international community would take all the money that it pumps into the conflict right now, raise their standard of living. I want everybody to have proper lives. If we start thinking about it these ways, I think it's much more realistic than walking down the failed paths of the two-state solution.
The point that Noam asked before very facetiously is why I'm suggesting that the Palestinians should vote in Jordan, why not in France? And obviously I didn't randomly choose Palestine, here, that's Jordan instead, because to me Jordan is Palestine. The common denominator for all of the right-wing thinking in Israel today is Annex Area C. Area C is not all of Judea and Samaria, it's about 40%, but that's 100% of where the settlements, where there are Jews, and there are 3% of Palestinians living in those areas. That's the common denominator. And this is where the right wing diverges. This is where you got confused before. Part of the right wing in Israel today says annex all of the areas, not only C, do the same for A and B, and give them the right to vote. What I believe, and this is where my answer to all those that ask me about the Jordanian solution and why Jordan is more relevant than France, because you all know that in the 1917 Balfour Declaration and the San Remo Conference, the area that was supposed to be a national homeland for the Jews is Palestine. Palestine in those days included the West Bank and the East Bank. The whole entire area was designated by the Balfour Declaration. Okay, in the 1920s, France and the Brits decided that they would divide it up differently and give the Hashemites control over Palestine. But historically, and then again democratically and demographically, like I mentioned before, truly, Jordan is Palestine already if they had a true democracy. There are 80% of the people living there. So therefore, when I say we should give voting rights to Arabs living in Judea and Samaria, it's because that is their nation state already. It exists. The aspiration of the Palestinians that they are going to take over Judea and Samaria and they are going to annihilate the state of Israel has to be changed. We can give them proper lives alongside us. I want the Palestinians to have proper lives in Judea and Samaria, and I want them to thrive there alongside me. The fact that they're going to have their own national sovereignty there was never realistic. We have to start getting away from that, and then we'll be on the right road to peace.